Not too long ago, we looked at some of the best WWE debuts in company history, but this time we're going to look at some of the worst while opening the floor up to all wrestling promotions. This time I'm also going to be a bit more loose in regards to what counts as a debut. For example, I'll include in-ring debuts even if the wrestler was seen on TV via pre-taped videos or promos. It can be gimmick repackages, it can be a wrestler debuting in a new company, things like that. I've already shortlisted a ton of good debuts based around the comments you guys posted in the previous best debuts video, so please use the comment section to share some of your favourite worst debuts and I'll put together round 2 in the near future. With all that out of the way, let's begin with a debut that's going to make your blood run cold. Glacier. Oh, Glacier. This debut isn't necessarily based on Raymond Lloyd's performance in the ring when he first showed up. It's more about how long it took him to show up after WCW had hyped the character up for a total of 5 months. During WCW television broadcasts that even extended beyond their Monday Nitro show, videos would air that said our world was about to change. A portal would open up and the words "blood runs cold" would get displayed on the screen. Week after week these videos would air and fans would just have to guess exactly what they meant while hoping the answer would get revealed the following week. The reveal was supposed to happen sometime in July 1996, but due to the NWO forming at Bash at the Beach that year, the debut of Glacier was put on ice. Put on ice. And fans had to endure even more pre-taped videos until the debut actually happened. To be fair, near the end, WCW did reveal what the videos were about before Glacier wrestled on TV. A few videos were made that showed the character off as he performed karate moves on top of Elsa's ice castle, and it was during these promos when fans realised that Glacier was nothing more than a Sub-Zero ripoff. He was clearly inspired by Mortal Kombat. This didn't bode well for Raymond's future, seeing as WCW had seemingly cracked the code by presenting reality-based storylines, and seeing as the NWO was the catalyst for WCW beating the WWF in the television ratings, the outlook for our frosty friend didn't look terribly good. Still, he had a place on WCW programming for sure. There has to be something for everyone on Nitro every week. Only he didn't debut on Nitro, he debuted on WCW Pro. On the September 9th, 1996 episode of WCW Pro, Glacier defeated the Gambler. So after literal months of build-up, a vast majority of fans didn't even see the debut due to Pro not being available in as many markets as Nitro. Those who did care about the character probably learnt about his debut through word of mouth. So it's a case of Bischoff having this grand idea in his head, but he clearly let it fizzle out when he signed some bigger stars. Glacier was unique though, his entrance was good, and inside the ring there was no one on the WCW roster who wrestled the way he did. The build up to his debut was completely botched though, and it went on for way too long. Rob Van Dam was a big player in the world of pro wrestling, and anyone would have been happy to have him on their roster. TNA signed Van Dam in 2010 and he made his debut as a mystery opponent for Sting on the March 8th episode of Impact, and everything about this debut was bad except for the pop RVD got when his initial showed up on the big screen. Earlier in the evening, Sting turned heel when he attacked Hulk Hogan in Abyss, and Sting made his way out to the ring to face a mystery opponent who would turn out to be Mr. Monday Night. Van Dam appeared from the audience and he beat Sting in around 10 seconds after a top rope kick followed by the Rolling Thunder, and then Sting beat the crap out of RVD with his baseball bat. This wasn't just a few shots to get revenge. Sting beat RVD up quite a bit here after Mike Tenay called Van Dam the hottest free agent in pro wrestling just minutes prior. Hulk Hogan then shows up looking for some revenge for earlier on. Bubba the Love Sponge, of all people, tries to hold Hulk back. Sting ends up attacking Hulk again with his baseball bat, so in actuality, RVD ended up the least important person in this whole debacle. I read somewhere that Hogan missed his cue and he was supposed to come down to the ring a lot earlier, hence why RVD took such a sustained beating from Sting, but I don't even know if that's true or not. In the end, Van Dam looked like a chump. This was more about Sting and Hulk Hogan, and what should have been a great moment for TNA turned into another miserable showcase as they tried to take on WWE Raw every Monday night. This one highlights how the WWF's pettiness not only hurt themselves but also screwed around with fan expectations. creating one giant disappointment while simultaneously making the WWF, Vince McMahon, and even Jim Ross look incredibly stupid. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who played the Diesel and Razor Ramon characters in WWF respectively, showed up in WCW, and pro wrestling as a whole was never the same again. The night Kevin Nash returned to WCW was the first night that the fabled 83-week win streak began, and along with Scott Hall, these two outsiders became the talk of the wrestling world. Showing how petty-minded they really were, the WWF felt Scott and Kevin were acting way too much like their trademark WWF characters when they jumped over to WCW. They weren't happy with how they were being portrayed as WWF invaders, and the WWF took WCW to court over Nash and Hall being what the WWF perceived to be rip-off characters that they created. In an effort to cool the lawsuit down, the Outsiders had to announce, live on WCW pay-per-view, that they did not represent the WWF and they weren't sent by the WWF to invade WCW. You really would have thought this would have been enough to put the issue to bed, but no. Just to make a point and to prove they own the intellectual property of their characters, the WWF made two other wrestlers cosplay as Razor Ramon and Diesel, and you can only imagine how this went down on TV. The WWF had turned Jim Ross heel and he promised to deliver something that even Vince McMahon couldn't deliver: the return of Diesel and the return of Razor Ramon. This was fascinating at the time, as Hall and Nash were being featured on Nitro every week, and even Eric Bischoff was worried that Scott and Hall were pulling a fast one on WCW, even going as far as to make them sign new contracts. The fake Razor and Diesel were spotted briefly during the In Your House Man Games pay-per-view, but only from behind, and Jim Ross promised to deliver Razor Ramon the very next night on Raw, followed by Diesel. So Rick Bogner walked out on Raw dressed up in Scott's Razor Ramon gear. He got in the ring where Razor's famous pyro went off. He tried to put on Razor's accent, which just sounded absolutely terrible, and fans hated it. They absolutely hated it. It made the WWF look second rate. It made the fans feel like the WWF had screwed them over. Jim Ross looked idiotic for promising something that he obviously couldn't deliver. And then there's poor Rick Bogner, who's just been stuck with the worst job imaginable. The fake Diesel showed up the next week. Glenn Jacobs tried to do his best Kevin Nash impression while failing to realise that Nash's look was one of the key ingredients that made him so popular. And yeah, through all of this, the WWF came out looking way worse, while WCW and the NWO continued to dominate in the TV ratings every week. A giant swing and a miss here that makes you wonder what on earth Vince McMahon was thinking. Bizarrely, the fake Razor Ramon and fake Diesel were also kept on TV for quite some time. They lasted about 4 months when they shouldn't have even lasted 4 minutes. Matt Sydal has a seriously decorated career that's still going to this very day. He's won championships in over 10 different promotions with stops in New Japan, Dragon Gate, Ring of Honor, TNA, WWE and loads more. The guy's seasoned, he knows his way around the ring, but unfortunately he botched pretty badly when he made his debut for AEW. Matt was a surprise entrant in the Casino Battle Royal. He got a great reaction as he made his way down to the ring. He then went up for a shooting star press and, well, as you can see, it didn't work out. You can only imagine how the poor guy felt after this happened, and keep in mind it was seriously uncharacteristic for Matt to mess up top rope moves like this. He's an incredible high flyer, so it begs the question, how did this happen? Well, Matt said he could give a million excuses, but he didn't want to do that. He did allude to the smoke around the entranceway as a potential reason for the botch, but Matt was just relieved that he got his arm out on time to stop his whole body rotating. He has a history of neck issues, and this could have been a lot worse. He managed to pick himself up and he got back in the match. AEW didn't give up on him after the mistake. You have to put this one down as a freak accident, seeing his match jumped off the ropes probably thousands of times, but yeah, not the best way to make your company debut. This is a gimmick debut, not a wrestler debut. Dustin Runnels had already wrestled in WCW and he made quite a lot of noise with his controversial Goldust character in the WWF. But his Seven character was just, I don't know, it was really something else. Many wrongfully say that the whole Seven idea came from Vince Russo, which isn't true at all. It was Russo who came up with the idea of Dustin tearing the gimmick apart on live TV, but the initial Seven character didn't come from Vince. When the 7 vignettes aired on TV, WCW was having severe problems in regards to management. Eric Bischoff had been removed from power and Bill Bush was overseeing a creative committee that seemingly didn't have much direction. They were kinda picking up the pieces of ideas Eric Bischoff had left behind or trying to carry on with storylines and angles that were already established when Eric was fired. One of these ideas was Seven, a creepy dude portrayed by Dustin Runnels who would legitimately visit children at their bedroom windows in the middle of the night. I'm not making this up. By the time Dustin was about to bring the character to arenas across America, Vince Russo had taken over as the new head of creative. Vince didn't have the same enthusiasm for the Seven gimmick as those who came before him, so instead Russo made Dustin go out on live TV while dressed up in his new outfit, and Dustin was instructed to tear his new character apart. Dustin said Goldust almost ruined his career, and WCW's answer to this was to dress him up like Uncle Fester all year long. He called the new gimmick an embarrassment to the Rhodes name, and he told the powers that be that they could stick Seven up their asses. To be fair, the character did look terrible, and to his credit, Vince Russo was the one who stopped it from going any further. But the debut was really something else. It was practically a WCW superstar coming down to the ring to announce that the company's ideas were terrible. It didn't do WCW any favours, and it sure didn't do Dustin any favours either. Edge's in-ring debut on Monday Night Raw went pretty badly due to Edge's opponent suffering a serious injury. Edge's arrival had been hyped up for weeks, not a lot was known about this guy, and even Adam Copeland said he had no idea what he was supposed to be when filming his debut vignettes for WWF TV. But he finally had his debut match on the June 22nd, 1998 episode of Raw, and he faced Jose Estrada in his televised WWF debut. Not even a minute into the match, Edge flips over the top rope and he lands on Estrada. Estrada doesn't move and the referee has no choice but to count out Edge's opponent. This obviously wasn't the planned finish for the match, and for a while it was feared that Jose Estrada had suffered from a broken neck. In the end, it was severe nerve damage, still nothing to take lightly by any means. And you can see Edge looking very concerned as Estrada stays on the outside. There's also a look of disappointment when Edge gets awarded the win. There's nothing he can do at that very moment in time but to accept that his debut didn't go as planned. And Edge said he felt like, and I quote, Edge felt like a bag of prison ass after this match took place. He felt absolutely rotten. Edge also said he knew the WWF had confidence in him and they wanted to build him up early as a star, what with all the vignettes they'd recorded, but he felt like he let everyone down while also being very worried about his opponent's well-being. Bret Hart's WCW debut, it's like having a million great possibilities and choosing one of the worst possible. The Hitman was the talk of the world after the WWF Montreal Screwjob. The guy had endured one of the realest things that ever happened in pro wrestling, and he was going to debut in the WWF's rival promotion a few weeks later. How does WCW capitalise on this absolute gift from the gods? How does WCW take the biggest story of the year and use it to make their company better? They bring Bret Hart out on Nitro and they announce he's gonna be a special referee. A special referee in an upcoming Starrcade match between Eric Bischoff and Larry Zbyszko. The reason for this? Well, Bret says he knows what it's like to get screwed over by a referee, and therefore he was the right man to officiate this match. A match where the future of WCW Nitro was on the line. I'm 100% positive that you, yes you, watching this video, could come up with 5 or 10 better ways to introduce Bret to WCW audiences. It's truly baffling that Bischoff would waste this golden opportunity on something so flat and uninspired. Yes, Bret did get involved in the Starrcade main event when he officiated the closing moments of the match, but that was terrible too, and Hart's momentum sunk quicker than the Titanic when Starrcade 97 was said and done. Did Bret ever recover? Some of the ideas WCW had for Bret were okay. I know it's not popular to say, but he had a few good things going for him at certain times, but admittedly, these were few and far between. The arrival of the fake Razor Ramon and fake Diesel proves that imitation isn't necessarily the most sincere form of flattery. It also proved that wrestling companies didn't really care about conning their fan bases, but the WWF aren't the only organisation who indulged in such tactics. When Big Van Vader made an alliance with Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan needed some backup, and that backup came in the form of the ultimate surprise. It was in March of 1995 when Hogan said those words on WCW TV, and naturally, fans instantly thought of the Ultimate Warrior. Jim Hellwig hadn't been seen in the WWF for quite some time. His name was mentioned on Mean Gene's hotline, and the only way fans could see this ultimate surprise was by, of course, purchasing a WCW pay-per-view, Uncensored 95. The reveal did indeed happen. Hogan was about to get jumped by Flair and Vader. A rip-off of the Ultimate Warrior's WWF music played in the arena, and fans were initially excited when that music played. When the Renegade ran down to the ring instead of the Ultimate Warrior, those cheers quickly died down, and fans realised they'd just been hoodwinked. Now, of course, WCW didn't flat out say Warrior was going to debut, but it still comes across as a real dirty tactic to get people to buy their pay-per-view. And when you remember, especially in WCW, that Hulk Hogan isn't the type of guy to give the rub to a young newcomer, you quickly realise that this was just a big old scam just to make people buy the show. WCW at least kept the Renegade around for a bit, and he was even able to beat Arn Anderson for the TV title, but as time went on, the character was relegated to jobber status, and months after being released, Richard Wilson, the man who portrayed the character, decided to end his own life due to severe depression. It's a terribly sad story all in all, and we can't really say if Richard was promised the world before making his debut, but I'm sure he felt his career was on the right path by being associated with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. The debut was terrible, though the Renegade wasn't great nor good in the ring, and this one proves that certain wrestling companies would do absolutely anything if it meant getting a few extra pay-per-view buys, including viewing their fans as a bunch of idiots. Just over 3 years after the Renegade debuted, WCW were able to sign the actual real Ultimate Warrior. Jim Hellwig was coming into the company to have a match against Hollywood Hogan, and the history between these two would be used as the driving force behind their reignited rivalry. WCW tried their best to keep this one under wraps. The Warrior did receive a good reaction when he came out on Nitro to face his old enemy and friend, but things took a bad turn when Warrior grabbed the microphone. Now, there's nothing wrong with long promos. As a matter of fact, I prefer long promos so long as it has substantial content that serves a meaningful purpose. The Warrior, unfortunately, had really nothing substantial to say, and very little of what he did say was meaningful. As a matter of fact, he blubbered on so long that people lost their excitement mid-promo. You could sum it up all pretty quickly. Warrior was disappointed that Hogan turned to the dark side. Warrior wrestled a great man at WrestleMania 6, but now Hogan's lowered himself by leading the NWO. Warrior doesn't feel that Hogan's claims of building pro wrestling as we know it has any validity. So these two are going to clash again, and Warrior's going to do exactly what he did last time, beat Hogan in the middle of the ring. Next week, Warrior's going to start a revolution of some description, but that's your hook right there to tune into Nitro for next week. And yeah, that's about it really. Warrior blabbered on so much that the promo went on for a staggering 13 minutes. And yes, by all means, milk the debut of the Ultimate Warrior for all it's worth, but you don't need to have him speak for so long. A stare down without either man saying a word would have been equally, if not more, effective. You can see Bischoff getting agitated too as the promo goes on. He knows Warrior's going way over his allotted time, but Warrior doesn't seem to care. I know there are some folks out there who actually enjoy this one, but for me, it's way too long-winded, and it does bring the excitement levels down the more it goes on. Sometimes it's best to just keep your mouth shut. I think there's a perception nowadays that WWF fans of the late 80s and early 90s kinda accepted anything they saw on TV as good. Like, it didn't take much in-ring talent or many deep storylines to keep folks happy. There may be an element of truth to this, seeing as wrestling's evolved an incredible lot since then, but there are multiple instances of fans rejecting things that the WWF presented to them during this era. One of the best examples would be the Gobbledygooker, because when this giant turkey hatched at the 1990 Survivor Series in Hartford, Connecticut, fans instantly showed their displeasure. They booed the Gobbledygooker out of the arena, and poor Hector Guerrero had to continue the act like it was all going really well. This one was also teased for weeks. No one knew what was inside the egg and rumours were circulating about what it could be. When you tease something like this, especially during this era, you better deliver something good because expectations are naturally going to be very high. The egg hatched, Mean Gene had to act all surprised. Fans instantly booed the gobbledygooker. Roddy Piper on commentary said the turkey had won the heart of Hartford. Gorilla Monsoon called the reveal a big smash, and the mascot disappeared after a few weeks. That being said, the WWE would sometimes use the gobbledygooker for cheap laughs. The character would get brought back every now and then for its comedy value or lack thereof. One of the company's biggest flops for sure, and one that'll live on in pro wrestling lore forever. The Dungeon of Doom had a big surprise for Hulk Hogan at Halloween Havoc 95. A big spooky jabroni that broke out of a block of ice live on Monday Nitro. Yeah, Nitro in the pre-NWO days sure was interesting. Hogan went on to Halloween Havoc where he murdered the Giant after their Monster Truck Sumo match. The Giant got some Phoenix down or something and he was brought right back to life. Giant and Hogan had a main event match at the pay-per-view. The Giant won thanks to Jimmy Hart stabbing the Hulkster in the back. And then a mummy walked down to the ring. A mummy that Tony Schiavone called the Yeti.
And the Yeti!
Tony's way of saying Yeti was the least tragic thing about this whole debacle, unfortunately, as the Yeti got in the ring to hump Hogan from the rear while the Giant took care of all the front action. Why is the Yeti dressed like a mummy? Why is he humping Hulk Hogan? Why is he even here, seeing as the match has already ended? Well, World War III was going to be WCW's next pay-per-view, and the original idea was to have 3 giants inside each of the 3 rings. This can even be seen during the opening video for the pay-per-view. The Yeti was going to serve as one of these giants, but still, all this doesn't take away from the fact that the debut was absolutely atrocious. After Halloween season ended, the Yeti became a giant ninja. The stupid costumes then came off and we got Big Ron Studd. And after leaving WCW and coming back, Ron Reese used his real name when he joined Raven's flock, albeit with a different spelling of his surname. Finally, it's the one you've been expecting from the very start, the Shockmaster, the most shocking debut in pro wrestling history. Clash of the Champions 24, August 18th, 1993, Daytona Beach, Florida. Ric Flair's holding one of his Flair for the Gold segments, and we're all going to find out who Sting and Davey Boy are bringing on to face Vader, Sid and Harlem Heat in the 1993 War Games match at Fall Brawl. Sting says this guy's going to shock us all, and yeah, he certainly did that when the pyro went off and he fell through a cheap wall. It's one of those clips we've seen so many times now, but it never loses its comedy value. The way the mask comes off and the way poor Fred Ottman has to scramble to put it back on, the way Ole Anderson can't keep it together while trying to be the voice of the Shockmaster, the way Davey Boy and Harlem Heat laugh at this unfortunate soul trying to stand up and get back into character, it's an all-timer right here that still makes me laugh every time I see it, though unfortunately the WWE Network versions muted some of the audio. There's a great episode of WWE Legends of Wrestling where Dusty Rhodes talks about the Shockmaster's debut. If you want to look it up, it's the worst characters episode. And seeing Dusty laugh about the whole thing while recalling young Cody watching at home and being surprised that Uncle Fred was under the Shockmaster's Stormtrooper helmet, it's all absolute gold. Do check it out when you get a chance. Dusty said he was laughing so hard that they had to take him back to his room. Fantastic. Let me know your favourite disastrous debuts in the comment section and I'll soon put together round 2. As mentioned, I'm using your suggestions for the next best debuts video, so if there's something you want to see covered, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thank you for choosing Wrestling Bios, even though you had a lot more choice. You can do me a solid by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and please take care.